Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. Today I want to address some of the comments that were asked, or not really asked, but stated after the video yesterday about can you live on $60K in Finland a year. So this is not just a response to that, but this is also going to be kind of talking about ways to get over to Finland. And I'm really hoping that my computer is going to cooperate with me. But I just went to this ceremony, my friend's wedding ceremony, and I'm like one of these people who's always crying at weddings, and it was so like touching. I don't know, like I'm really excited and happy for them, and I also feel like it's nice because like people don't get married so young anymore, and it was just like very inspirational for me. I don't know, it was really nice. So that's good. And then there's a little celebration later. So I'm excited because then I can get to do something social after I've spent lots of days trying to like organize all my stuff, which is still ongoing. But yes, so anyway, that's what's been going on. But I want to again address like ways to get over, and also like one of the things that I think gets really kind of lost in translation is comparing US salaries to Finnish salaries. And I feel like I've talked about this stuff already a lot, but it seems like some of it, maybe people don't see all of it, so it's not really sticking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So in my own calculation, I just looked at like what I take home gross versus, what I earn gross versus what I take home net. And I basically net about 60% of what I'm supposedly taking home. And then it's like, well, how is that possible? Because one of the things really to keep in mind about like focusing on the difference between like a Finnish income and a US income is the fact that all of these things, like universal healthcare, that was a good point, because yes, a lot of your monthly, like you are paying towards healthcare. Like, yes, this is a thing that happens. And then also like you have to save independently for your pension or your retirement or whatever you want to call it. So that's the other thing that's happening. And by the time you do all of that, contribute towards healthcare and contribute towards your pension, which we don't call it a pension, it's really a 401k. And then you're netting whatever. Like in my case, and paying taxes, right? In my case, it's taking home 60%, which, I was kind of like, let's just say well, this wouldn't really make sense living expense wise, but when I was trying to figure out more about like saving for a down payment, I'm like, I would have to have like a year of not spending any money on anything at all in order to save for a down payment. So this is really one of the biggest obstacles right now in the US is people saving for the down payment in order to get into their first home, especially when you're buying cheaper homes similar to what I bought, which was a co-op. They're not really going to allow these FHA loans or even like a VA loan, so Veterans Association, I think, loan, because they really want you to put down the 20%. So but you're getting into something cheaper. And also our interest rates right now are really high. They're at 7% versus in Finland right now, I think they're around 3 or less, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like somebody told me that recently. It was also funny because I was with my student friends today and somebody made this joke about like, oh, a bus stop is starting to look like a good piece of property. And I was like, that's hilarious, because yeah, we're all kind of acknowledging that the economic situation is getting a little bit out of control and very difficult. So yes, all right, where do I want to go with this? How to get to Finland? Well, okay, basically the first thing I was trying to like qualify here is just it is a very apples to oranges comparison, because like if I'm taking home $3,600, that's cool, but again, when you're looking at the fact that your living expenses in the US are about $3,100, like I showed in this video yesterday, like is that really so cool? Because that doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room for like incidental costs. So again, I always kind of believe that whatever the median income is sort of like keeping up with whatever like the cost of living is in that area. Especially in New Jersey, this is a huge problem, because I think it's like in order to just like be comfortable-ish, like, or have a home or something in New Jersey, your average income needs to be $107,000, or maybe that is the average income in New Jersey, which is a lot higher than $74,000, which is the median average. Okay, so all these things to consider. And then somebody wrote that $3,600 is the median. I'm going to assume that's gross salary monthly in Finland. So I also remember when I was earning about $1,300, and I know it's on the low end, but I was taking home like the majority of that. Like I don't really remember paying that much in taxes, but that's also because it was very low, which $1,300 is now the amount that as somebody who has already graduated and is no longer a student, you need to be earning that amount in order to stay in Finland legally. Like, unless you're doing something similar to what I'm doing currently, which is that I'm a self-funded PhD student. So, like, I had to show that I have funding, self-funding for the next, like, several years in order to, like, support my living expenses, which, like, at this point, that money is no longer there. But, again, that's only going to be an issue some years from now. Okay, so now... All right, so again, like, what I was trying to outline there is just, like, it's hard to really compare because, like, the cost structure is so different. The way we look at salaries is so different. Like, hearing this annual salary of, like, $74,000 sounds like so much, but, like, I'm going to give an example. I had somebody I knew from Los Angeles come out here to Finland and be like, people were telling me that their salaries are $40,000 or 40,000 euros a year. Is that a lot? Because 40,000 in the US is like pretty borderline, like poverty line. Technically poverty line, I think is around 15 or 20K a year, but it is like almost impossible to survive off of 40,000 a year in the US and get median income 74 on the low end 60. You can kind of survive off of 60. It's going to be tight. You're really going to look a lot higher than that. And I was explaining to my friends recently who I was talking to, I'm like, yeah, let's say the average person filing their taxes, it's like 100K, and they're like, 100K, and I'm like, no, like, a lot of people are earning 100K, like, these are what the salaries are, but, like, look at the price of homes, look at the fact that you have to have a car, look at the price of your cell phone bill, look at the price of your electricity bill. My electricity bill in Finland is 20 euros a month. My electricity bill in the US, which I have not gotten yet, but I need to pay, is probably going to be between $100 and $200 a month. Okay, that's like 5 years of my electricity bill in Finland. Or 5 years. 5 months, that's what I meant. Okay, so now that we're kind of out of that, I'm going to talk more about, like, how do you end up here? And, like, all I knew, and I agree with, there was this comment, this was a really good comment, about, like, how the cost is actually very similar to, like, what you would pay living in, like, a capital CIS country. Absolutely. I went to Armenia recently and was like, oh, it's going to be so cheap. No, I was spending much more money on food there than I even spend in Finland, like... It was kind of crazy, and I was like, how is this even happening? Because now they add obslužovanie, it's like tips, like, or it's like really like service fee. A lot of places add on automatic 10%. They're getting very democratic over there. No, American, whatever. So that's very interesting. But anyway, so, yes, I do agree with that's a thing. But yeah, like, because they really want everybody in these kinds of countries to have a place to live, like, they do not, like, jack up rent. I guess they have some form of rent control in place. I would love to know what that is. I've not done research on that. Like, student housing, I think they've been saying that they're gonna jack up the rent. I've heard rumors that they're going to. I'm not sure that I've heard that they've actually done that. I should probably just start asking people that, because I don't know the answer to that. But yes, so like these countries notoriously like do not just let people in. I mean, think about it. If you are letting people in and they're kind of like taking advantage of the system, because a lot of people are coming from countries where they have to take advantage of the system to survive. And I'm not saying you should do this. I'm just saying, like, you have to understand that, like, people are like programmed or conditioned is the better word to do this. So it's like in the US, right? It's like tax code. Like, we have to file our own taxes. There are ways to take advantage of the tax code. You don't have that option in Finland. And you don't really need that option because all of your needs are being met. Like, you have to keep in mind, it's like when people's needs are not being met, that is what is going to drive them to do these things. It's not just about greed, okay? Like, if my need for housing is not being met, like, that's a problem. That's not actually a problem here in the US. That is a problem for me. A problem here in Finland, but that would be a problem for me in the US. Okay, so those things. Now, because of this welfare thing, it's a good point that they're not necessarily wanting to let people in so easily. So what are the ways in which you can get in? Well, we all know that everybody likes the top tier immigrants, let's call it that, okay? And we also need to start with the fact that being an immigrant is always going to be hard. Even if you learn the language, you're going to have a weird accent, like all of these things. I recognize that happened to me. People will respect you that you learned it, right? But, like, it's still going to be a thing that's going to, like, create some challenges around getting a job. So it's going to be harder for you to kind of get to a position as, like, a natural born Finn coming to Finland as an immigrant. So it's not impossible, right? But it's more difficult. And then you're also going to have to, like, end up in Helsinki, which I've been hesitant to do myself. And yeah, so you have, like, those kinds of things going on. Okay, now, Yes, top tier immigrants. So, education is one way to do this. I've already expressed the fact that they now do not want people to come in, like, give them free rides the same way they were for, like, international students, even if they're, like, talented. Somebody made a good point, and this has to do with the fact that, like, a lot of immigrants were coming in using the education and not staying in Finland. A lot of people would like to stay in Finland, and, the job market's getting hard everywhere, but I would say the number one kind of discussion around young people right now is, like, being very concerned about the job market. I'll tell the story of I actually had a Finnish friend, native born Finn, who was having a hard time finding a job and in fact ended up having to like get a job in Germany because of like this kind of problem. So, just an example, but like, it is difficult. And I think that's, there's not a lot of job mobility because of that. And so people are kind of like maybe stagnating a bit, and it's just, there's not really a lot of like clearing the way for younger people. So like there is a really big economic problem around people want to work, but then they cannot secure employment. The US, I almost feel like, does not necessarily have that issue, but getting these jobs where you can actually financially afford to survive is really like the bigger issue there. Here, it's like any job will do. In the US, it's like you need a specific job to live. So like these are two different types of problems. Let me think about this some more. I personally just think that the student track is the easiest way to come in because, like, you're paying the Finnish government money to come here, right? Like, everybody loves when we bring people into the country to, like, pay us money. Think about all the places that have been developing tourism and all that kind of stuff. So, like, we have those things going on. Now, that also will pave the way a little bit more nicely for if you are able to secure employment here because you already have that job training. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to just cold apply for a job and to get into Finland. I just see it being a lot harder, especially due to the fact that there are a lot of jobs that are in the hidden job market. All right, so I'm going to advocate for coming in on education. To be honest, if you were somebody who wanted to immigrate to the U.S., I'd probably say the same thing. I would probably advocate for a PhD program, though, if you're able to get into one of those, because U.S., like, the cost of U.S. education is like astronomical, as we know, and it's just, to me, not worth it. Like, you're digging yourself like so much debt that you'll never get out of. That doesn't even make any sense. Americans can barely afford education, So the other thing that I've heard of, and I think this is interesting, so I'm going to share this, is I talked a lot about entrepreneurship, and yes, this is a thing. What does entrepreneuring require? Having money, right? We know this. Now, the tricky thing here is that you can kind of like come in and invest in a company and buy, but if you, again, bringing money into Finland, but you're going to like need to have money already. So if you're just like, I want to go to Finland to retire on 60K, like that's going to be a little bit difficult. Now, other things, getting married, that doesn't guarantee you citizenship, but it would make it easier for you to have some sort of like strong ties to Finland, or like means or grounds to come to Finland. One of the things that people assume that is completely not true is that owning property in Finland gives you strong ties to Finland in a way that they're just going to let you stay in Finland. Absolutely 100% not true. You can like Google that. Like, I've already Googled that myself. It has nothing to do with anything. So, education, employment, or entrepreneurship. I mean, aside from that, you are allowed to be in Finland visa free for 90 days. If you can't secure a residence permit for some reason. But, again, it's like you need to have a reason. So just being like, I want to go to Finland, well, it's like being like, I want to go to the US to go to the US. I, in fact, think people are much more creative figuring out how to, like, get into the US than here. I have no idea. I mean, granted, there's always an asylum seeking thing, but I don't know how you would seek asylum from the US to Finland when both of these places are more Western and democratic and, observe human rights and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, there's all that. But, I don't know. So, like, what would my advice be? Like, a lot of goals are work. They're hard work. And I've seen people come here in their 30s, okay? Like, people who, like, have done very well in their own country and have a house and a mortgage and had a good job and left it to come here to study. And it's a sacrifice and it's work. And that's what immigration looks like. So it's like, you want to immigrate to Finland and just do it for fun. Unless you're already rich, which I don't think that's necessarily the case for most people, it's going to be difficult. So, yeah, that's all I really have for today, I think, because I mean, it's an interesting discussion. It's a difficult discussion. I think a lot of times, people like to assume that somebody out there has it better than them, and like that's true sometimes, but it's not true other times. So it's like, take it or leave it. There are probably already good things about where you're living, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to change your circumstances, but understanding that changing your circumstances is going to require a lot of work that you may not particularly feel like doing. So, it's up to you. As I say, the world is an oyster, and, you go get what you want if you want it bad enough. Doesn't mean it's not going to be a pain in the butt, but it's possible. All right, well, hopefully that information helps somebody. Until next time, bye.